I have an appointment in 45 minutes to sign papers to sell my old house at the title company, so we gotta do this fast, but big news happened today, and why is my head so big? Let's make that smaller. Okay, the 7600X 3D, which was rumored, is now official. However, like its, I guess, predecessor, the 5600X 3D, this is a Micro Center exclusive, and it's looking like it's available as a bundle deal through Micro Center. So certainly less exciting than if the whole world got it. Also, while it's listed at $299.99, if it's part of a bundle deal, then you're not really paying that price because their whole 3-part bundle, which comes with a motherboard and 32 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 CL32 memory, is actually coming in at $450 rather than the total, if you added up all the prices they're listing, at $630. Now, the prices they're listing aren't necessarily like what those parts would actually go for individually anyway. So in other words, is this actually a good deal? And let's also slow down for a second. Okay, what is a 7600X 3D and why would you care? So basically, if you're out of the loop, AMD's X3D CPUs have additional cache, which is incredibly beneficial to gaming performance. Now, this particular part hasn't actually been benchmarked yet, so I'm sure one of the big CPU review channels will probably get their hands on one of these and test it out soon. But what would we expect? So while this would be a 6-core part, because it is a 7600X 3D, this has the additional 3D V cache, which again is very beneficial for gaming performance. So we would expect this probably to outperform in most games the entire 7000 series lineup, except for the 7800X 3D, which also has the additional V cache, but has 2 additional cores, probably clocks higher. So what's going on with this part anyway? And why would this be a limited launch? So what happened with the 5600X 3D, where this already happened, in the previous generation, is basically you get parts that aren't quite good enough to be used as a 7800X 3D. So that means that you then have to, bin them down. So these are going to be binned products that can't make it as one of their existing SKUs, but they probably don't have enough of them to actually sell, worldwide through their normal distribution chains. So instead, they're going to launch it, but in a limited capacity, in this case through Micro Center exclusively, which is disappointing for much of the world, and even for people like me who live in the US, but Micro Center is prohibitively far away from me. I think they have 28 locations. There's not even one in every state. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on here. Now, is this actually a good deal? Because by itself, $300 does sound pretty expensive. But if we look at it in terms of the bundle deal for somebody who's building a whole new system, $450 for this bundle deal, well, let's take a look. So if I hop into PC Part Picker and try to put together a similar bundle deal, let's see where that gets us. So if I slot in, well, here's the thing. I don't have a 7600X 3D that I can buy on PC Part Picker. So what if we slot in the 7600? This is the non-X3D part, which will perform worse than the 7600X 3D, right? So that's the idea, at least in gaming. So we're looking at, okay, what if we do the non-3D V cache part and put it up against it? Now, I found this same motherboard that they listed for their bundle deal, which is the Asus TUF Gaming B650M Plus Wi-Fi. Now, however, you could also find cheaper motherboards, so that's another thing to consider. But at least for now, let's start by looking at the same motherboard, which I could buy as low as $190 on Amazon right now. And then the cheapest DDR5 6000 memory I could find is actually CL30, not CL32, when I'm getting the 32 gigabyte kit. And that's coming in at about $91. So you can see that those prices are already a little bit different than what we're seeing here. From the Micro Center parts list, at least on the memory and the motherboard. But again, their total's coming out at $450 once you get that bundle deal. What is our total coming out here? This is coming in at about $463. So this is a little bit more expensive, but please note that while we're getting slightly tighter timings on our memory, we're getting a much worse gaming CPU, at least theoretically. Again, benchmarks aren't out yet, but we're getting a 7600 without the 3D V cache for around the same price. So then the other way you could look at this is, okay, what if you actually slotted in something like a 7800X 3D? Well, those are currently, they had been available as low as around $330, but the prices have gone way up again, unfortunately. I think due to the fact that the 9000 series processors didn't end up being actually faster at gaming. So with that case in mind, if you wanted to get the 3D Vcache type setup, but you had to go with the 7800X 3D, we'd be talking about like a $700 bundle at current pricing. So that's another way of looking at that. So kind of interesting. If we go back to the 7600, part here at $182 though, again without the 3D Vcache. The other thought though is with the bundle deal, you're kind of forced into a certain motherboard. There are less expensive but compatible motherboards. So if I just sort compatible motherboards low to high, you can certainly get a compatible motherboard as low as $70. However, that's an A620 chipset. The cheapest B650, but it doesn't look like coming with Wi-Fi. And again, I don't know how good the VRMs are on this or anything like that. Not that you probably need very good VRMs if you're just going to stick on that 7600X 3D, but something to think about if you're upgrading and all of that. So let's throw in the cheapest available B650 currently online. Then we could come in as low as $373 for a 7600 deal. But again, this isn't the X3D part. So if you're looking at it like that, again, I really do think that this kind of a bundle deal actually sounds pretty reasonable for what I would assume would be extremely good gaming performance due to that 3D Vcache. More games are going to benefit from the 3D Vcache than just by going from 6 cores to 8 cores or something like that. So the fact that this only has 6 cores, I wouldn't be too concerned about. 6-core, 12-thread processors generally aren't hit too bad in gaming performance compared to an 8-core, 16-thread, and having that 3D Vcache I think would be pretty interesting. So again, disappointing that this isn't going worldwide. I am interested to see what actual benchmarks say of the performance. But for people living near a micro center and looking to throw together a gaming PC, this type of bundle deal, I think would certainly be welcome, especially with the fact that AMD's CPUs in general seem to have been getting faster by just downloading an update. So we'd already seen news that Windows 24 H2 would be coming with branch prediction optimizations that helped out not just the Ryzen 9000 series CPUs, but previous generations of Zen parts as well. However, it's looking like AMD has Windows has backported those AMD branch prediction optimizations into Windows 11 23 H2, which you can get right now. And this has been tested, and while the performance numbers didn't come out identical to the 24 H2 numbers, it was also showing big gaming performance. Some games were slightly better, some games were slightly worse from the outlets I've seen testing this out. So that's, really pretty cool. The 24 H2 numbers, again, we're showing, 11% uplift at hardware unboxed coming from the 9700X, parts like the 7700X showing 10% faster. And we've seen places testing out a 3D Vcache part like the 7800X 3D. We're also seeing pretty significant performance gains like here from Kit Guru. So anyway, just in general, AMD processors getting faster and then also getting access to this additional 3D Vcache part certainly sounds pretty interesting. Now, another note on software updates to maybe help AMD CPU gaming performance. There was a review from Anand Tech showing that there was possibly too much or an unusual amount of inter-CCD and chiplet latency. And it's looking like AMD may be providing a patch that will improve that. Although this is not official from AMD, it looks like this is coming from a GeekerOne video discussing this, saying that AMD will fix the Zen 5 C2C latency issues. So we'll have to see what comes of that. Now, again, these latency issues were pointed out in an Anand Tech review. And on that note, this is kind of sad news here. It's looking like Anand Tech has announced their end of the road in Anand Tech farewell, saying that it is with great sadness that I find myself penning the hardest news post I've ever needed to write here at Anand Tech after over 27 years of covering the wide and wild world of computing hardware. Today is Anand Tech's final day of publication, saying they started out with a review of an AMD processor and ended with a review of an AMD processor. I'll have links to everything I talk about today in my video description, so if you want to take a look more at this kind of sad goodbye to Anand Tech, you can follow up on that. Now, in other AMD processor news, it is looking like, as had kind of been rumored, some motherboards will be offering, with a release of a newer AGESA update, a uplift to the amount of power draw. At least you have a certain mode available, in this case 105 watt TDP mode available for the new 9000 series chips, which does give them a performance boost. But if this is anything like we saw in reviews testing like PBO optimizations, this performance boost is probably going to be in like heavily multi-threaded workloads like Cinebench, whereas gaming performance didn't tend to get much of an uplift from these higher TDP modes. So something to keep in mind when you're deciding whether or not to run the parts at the higher power draw configurations. Now, we also have some more RDNA4 news. In this case, a whole bunch of rumors really at this point, but let's get through them quick. So we're seeing headlines that AMD RDNA4 Radeon GPUs rumored to mirror RDNA1 in product positioning. Now, really, this just seems to be confirming that something we've been seeing rumored for a long time now. I'm seeing this reported at videocards.com, but they're getting their information from, is this Golden Pig Upgrade? Yeah, on Weibo. Golden Pig Upgrade does tend to have a lot of inside information from a lot of channels on parts and gets a lot of accurate leaks ahead of time. Anyway, the quote here is, the positioning of RDNA4 is similar to that of RDNA1, so don't expect flagship level performance. The focus is on reducing costs. If Navi 44 can improve the performance of mid-range GPUs, that would be a good thing. Otherwise, it could become common for NVIDIA to sell the AD107 as the 4060 in the future. In other words, basically they're saying that RDNA1 topped out at the 5700X, if I remember right, meaning that they didn't ever try to compete with like the 2080 Ti at that point in time. But what they did was have good price to performance positioning in kind of that mid-range and low end. And so, personally, I would welcome that. It's where I tend to recommend AMD already. So if they actually just launched a new position, to hopefully force NVIDIA to also, a lot of people are like, I want good AMD competition so it lowers NVIDIA pricing. Well, in general, it's just good to have good competition, and most people end up buying in that low to mid-range. So I wouldn't be too disappointed with RDNA4, even if it didn't compete at the super high end, if they did offer extremely competitive price to performance ratios in that mid to low end. So we'll have to see what happens. We've seen other leaks talking about the memory configurations. This one looks to be coming from Kepler, who again has leaked some things accurately in the past regarding AMD, but this is just saying, so who knows if this ends up being true or if it's just random speculation. But talking about the bit bus and the memory speed. So basically, this tweet would translate to 256-bit bus at 20 gigabit per second, which would be 640 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. 256-bit bus at 18 gigabits per second, which would be 576 gigabytes per second of total bandwidth. And 192-bit at 19 gigabit per second, which would be 456 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. If you want to look at how that compares to the previous generation, videocards.com does have a helpful tip showing the 7000 series, where you can see their memory capacity and bus size and then memory speeds. And you can see how that would kind of compare here. So that doesn't look too wildly off from some of the parts we're seeing from the 7000 series. So we'll just kind of have, again, a huge part of this comes into what is the overall price positioning of these cards and how fast do they actually end up being? Does AMD take any steps forward in ray tracing performance? Do they offer any kind of, machine learning upscaler advancements? There's so many questions about it. That we'll really just have to see a lot when it launches. But one more RDNA4 leak talking about the size of the Infinity cache. So this is coming from Kepler again, where Raw Mango asks, did you hear something about IC, so Infinity cache size? And Kepler replies with 64, 64, 48. Now, if you want to look again, videocards.com has a helpful chart here comparing that to the 7000 series. So the 8000 series, if we're going with 64 megabyte, 48 megabyte, you can see how that compares to the 7000 series, where the top-end chips have more infinity cache at 96 and 80, whereas starting with the 7900 GRE, we see 64, 7800 XT at 64, and 7700 XT at 48. So this again would line up more with the kind of mid-range parts from the 7000 series in terms of infinity cache. Again, if any of this ends up even being true, which is certainly still a question mark. Now we're also seeing talk about AMD's Kraken Point and its compatible memory configurations. Now, what is Kraken Point? So Kraken Point and Strix Halo are upcoming APUs, which would be Zen 5 architecture and RDNA 3.5 graphics. Now, this is coming from what I believe to be somebody from Lenovo, who should actually have knowledge. This article is calling it the Lenovo product manager, has now confirmed that Kraken does indeed support faster memory, because apparently there had been rumors that Kraken Point would only support LPDDR5X 7500 memory. He's confirming that it can support up to LPDDR5X 8000 megahertz, and he's saying, a lot of information is open to the manufacturer's personnel, but it cannot be disclosed now. I can't stand some outside whistleblowers playing tricks, talking nonsense, pretending to have information or outdated information, making people guess blindly. So he's calling out, you know, what are either fake or outdated leaks and rumors talking about product specs upcoming. So anyway, make of that what you will when it comes to how we analyze things like our RDNA4 leaks. He's not talking about those specifically, but again, leaks and rumors, always take them with a pretty heavy grain of salt. We're also seeing AMD's August driver finally hitting with Star Wars Outlaw and Call of Duty Black Ops 6 optimizations. Black Ops 6 beta comes out with early access if you pre-order today. I plan to do some performance testing in that. This also has optimizations for Concord and Final Fantasy 16. Also, we're getting some new hyper-tuning profiles, and we're getting anti-lag 2 support for Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. So another game getting that anti-lag 2 support, which requires being built into the game, but gives you better latency reduction than the driver-level anti-lag. And won't get you banned in anti-cheat stuff like the previously attempted anti-lag plus. Anyway, we're also seeing MSI's Claw 8 AI Plus with Intel Lunar Lake to feature an 80 watt-hour battery and 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. That certainly sounds more interesting than the current generation. So we'll have to see, you know, what performance ends up looking like on these new Intel, Lunar Lake parts. Hopefully it's good. In console news, we're seeing a leaked sketch of the PS5 Pro. You know what? It looks a lot like a PS5. Anyway, this is coming from Deals Lab. Apparently, somebody's saying that they've seen it but don't want to post a copyrighted image, so they did a pencil sketch. The main difference just seems to be this, and there's no disk drive, although that doesn't mean there won't be a disk drive version. If you want the rumored specs of the PS5 Pro, here they are. But I've got to move fast, guys, to like I said, I got an appointment to be out here soon. So a couple quick notes on some upcoming games. We've got Stalker 2 apparently is currently only running at 25 FPS on the Series S, but Xbox is helping with optimization. Devs praising their support. So hopefully we get good performance on Stalker 2 when it comes out. That's definitely a game I'd like to cover on the channel. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 will apparently not launch with DLSS 3 or FSR 3 frame generation. However, they are planning support for it after launch. And we're also seeing the Avowed art director saying Xbox Series X often runs better than PC. So hopefully he's just talking about, you know, maybe a mid-range or low-range PC. It's a little unclear what he meant in the direct quote. I was gonna get more into it, but I don't want to be late for my appointment. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed the video. I hope everybody has an excellent day.